Hi and welcome to a new video on my channel. In this tutorial I want to show you 4 different methods of casting on stitches at the end of the forward pass. When you want to cast on stitches at the beginning of the forward pass, you just chain and then pick up loops in the back bumps. But at the end of the forward pass it's a bit more complicated. But I will make it easy with these 4 methods. Then you can choose your favorite from these 4 and you can make your project. One of the uses for this cast on is when you make mittens bottom up. So if you work like this, you will need to cast on stitches at the end of the forward pass for one of the mittens. The other one will have stitches cast on at the beginning of the row. Another use for this might be sweaters worked top down, where you cast on stitches for the underarm section of the body. So if you work top down like that, you will need to add stitches at the beginning and the end of the row to create the space for the sleeve at the underarm. If you have ideas for more projects that will use this cast on method, please leave them in the comments. For now, let's get started. I will demonstrate using this chunky yarn and an 8mm hook, and I prepared a base with honeycomb because we need to cast on this side of the project. The first type of cast on that I'm going to show you is very simple, but first I need to reach the last stitch. So this is a honeycomb pattern. And after picking up the last stitch behind the 2 vertical bars at the end of the row, I will, for example, let's say in the pattern I need to cast on 5 stitches. The first method that I will show you just requires you to make half hitches, which you might be familiar from if you ever did macrame or any kind of knot work. So I'll put 5 of these half hitches on the hook. To do that, I take the yarn and bring the tail over the end that is connected to the hook and twist the loop so that the end that is on the hook is behind. Then I put this loop on and pull on the working tail. This is a very quick and very easy way to cast on stitches, but it's not very elastic. So now I made 5 stitches. The last one will be the new last stitch. So to cast off and continue with the return pass, I chain 1. And then yarn over pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And now we have added 5 stitches here. This is the first stitch, which used to be the last stitch for Tunisian simple stitches, and then we have the new last stitch. I will make another row just to show you how it works when you have to work into these loops. When you reach the previous last stitch, you can just pick up a loop in the front loop as if to make one Tunisian simple stitch, or any other stitch. You can make a knit stitch or a purl stitch, just like with any other stitch. And then we have these vertical bars. You can also make knit stitches here if you want to, purl stitches. You can do anything you need to do as if you had regular Tunisian simple stitches. And I will continue in the honeycomb pattern, 1 simple stitch, 1 purl stitch. For the last stitch, you turn the side here and insert the hook behind the 2 vertical bars at the end. Pull up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And from now on you can continue working in this piece as if you are working from the beginning of the project. On the bottom you will have these single loops where you can pick up stitches if you want to. For example, if you're making a mitten, it will look like this, and then you pick up stitches here to continue the thumb. I will switch colors and I will demonstrate another method of casting on stitches. This is the same yarn but in pink. And I am stopping before these cast on stitches and we'll make a few rows in honeycomb just so we have another piece like this. The second method I'm going to show you involves putting a half hitch on the hook and then chaining through it. So you do just like before, you put a half hitch like this, a loop on the hook, and instead of leaving it there, you chain 1. And then you repeat this. Put a half hitch and chain 1. I will do this again 5 times, and yes, it takes a bit more time. And when you have your stitches cast on, you chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And try not to pull on the cast on stitches because they might change a bit. On the next row we continue in pattern. Again, the last stitch we treat it as a simple stitch, and the next ones are very easy to see now, much easier than in the previous type of cast on. You can see the front vertical bar very easily, and at the end insert the hook behind the 2 vertical bars, draw up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to return. These are not blocked, so they will not stay nicely, but if you have a project you keep on working, they will start behaving. So just like before, we have a nice top part that looks like regular Tunisian crochet, and the bottom you have a bit more. Here you just have 1 loop, and here you have a kind of a knot. But you can still insert your hook through there to pick up a loop to make the edge. In terms of elasticity, this one is not very elastic. This one is a lot more elastic. So if you need a cast on edge that is more elastic, you can use this one. As you can see, it even has a tendency to curl because it's a bit looser than the simple stitches on top here. For the next type of casting on, I will switch colors again, and we have another blue. And I will make 2 rows in honeycomb stitch, so we have a space, a separator here between the cast-ons. I've reached the end of the forward pass, and now I will demonstrate the third method of casting on stitches. For this cast on, you will need to switch the hands, so the hook will move to the non-dominant hand and the yarn will move to the other hand. This cast on is taken from knitting, and it's a method I learned from a Selbu mittens video pattern. For this cast on you need quite a bit of space here on the hook and a pretty big loop. The loop has the working yarn in front and you put it around your finger. With the hook you go behind both strands of yarn, you come to the front and then you go through the loop. You can hold the loop with your other hand if you need to, and then you pull. This creates a knot here, a kind of a knot, and then you pull on it to tighten it to close to the hook. I will repeat this. So you have the loop with the tail in the front, you go with the hook around this whole loop, and then you go inside. Then you pull on the yarn. Again, loop, you go with the hook around the entire thing and then inside. Once more, around and then inside. Make sure you're not going through here. You're going around and then inside. So that's the cast on, and when you're finished you turn the work back and you pick up the yarn in your non-dominant hand again and you chain 1 for the last stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. This is what the first row looks like and I like it very much. So let's see how it is to work into it. When we reach the last stitch, as before, we make a regular stitch, and then when we have these stitches you will notice that they are twisted. What you want to work behind is this part of the stitch, which is in the front. So now I have a simple stitch. I go behind this loop, pick up a loop. For a purl stitch, again I go behind this loop in the front. And if I wanted to make a knit stitch, I would twist these around like this and go between them. But I want to make a simple stitch and then another purl stitch and the last stitch behind the 2 vertical bars. At the end, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And now let's look at the elasticity of this cast on. As you can see, it's quite shorter than the ones before, even though it has the same number of stitches, but it has good enough elasticity. It's the same as the first method, and the second method has more elasticity. At the bottom you have these chains. You have the loops where you can work into to pick up stitches. So that's method number 3, and I will change colors again to show you the last method. For this last cast on, you keep the order of the hands, and we will make a very stretchy cast on from knitting again. This one is a bit trickier, but I hope you won't get the hang of it. I learned it from a video called the stretchiest cast on in the world, and it also works for Tunisian crochet. You begin with the yarn coming from the back of the work around your thumb, from the back to the front. You insert your hook through the loop that is formed here, and then you twist your hand so that you can pick up the working yarn. You pass this through this big loop, and then you bring the new formed loop on the hook close to the other ones, and then you have to pull on the working yarn. This is one stitch. Again, we go through this loop from behind, you twist, and then you pick up the working yarn and you pull it through the loop. You take up the working yarn and pull. Sometimes it will be a bit difficult to pull this closed, but you have to work at it, and sometimes you will have to unmake this and start again. So we go underneath this loop, we pick up the working yarn and we pass it through. We move it close to the other loops, and then we hold on only to the working yarn and we pull. Now faster. It's not worth going very fast because it will not be fast. So again, through this loop, pick up a loop, get it back through. Hold on to it and pull. Now I cast on 5 new stitches on the hook, and as always we chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, this is what it looks like with the cute stitches here. You can see it's quite elastic. And for the next row, it's quite easy to see the loops where you have to pick up stitches. Then the last stitch. Chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And that's the last cast on. You can see it has almost the same length as the previous one, also from knitting, but it's quite elastic. Again, you have these loops on the bottom where you can pick up the stitches, and it looks almost the same as this one, the second one that I showed you. As you can see, they all create the same kind of stitches. that you can work into to make whatever you need to make with the cast on part. So I hope you will save this video and come back to it whenever you need to cast on stitches at the end of the forward pass in future projects. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you want to see more Tunisian crochet tutorials or other videos that I've put out, you can check them out on the channel, and you can subscribe to my emails if you want to know when I publish more tutorials, patterns, and other informative pieces of content that you might be interested in. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!